This is E&P Reports, a service of Editor and Publisher Magazine. Since 1884, the authoritative voice of news publishing. Hi again, I'm Mike Blinder, publisher of E&P, and today I go one-on-one with Peter Newton. Peter Newton, who was at GateHouse for over a decade, helped them build their strategy of digital services, Propel, then ThriveHive, took them into the world of growth to over 400 newspapers, managed hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people. And now he's on his own as the founder and CEO of Big Rock Consulting and still very embedded in our industry, consulting some of the larger companies that are part of it. More importantly, working with the local media association on some very innovative ventures. So we're going to ask Peter about what it was like to be at GateHouse, see as much information as we can get about the merger, and then, of course, the future of big consolidation, and then where he sees the industry going and what he's currently doing. So join me as I go one-on-one with Peter Newton. Peter Newton, thank you so much for joining us today on E&P Reports.
Thank you, Mike. I'm really glad to be here.
I am honored, sir. Let me just, first of all, I went to your LinkedIn profile. And obviously, now that you have left the GateHouse world and you're on your own, you are president and founder of Big Rock Consulting Group. But I love, if there is one guy that really gets the industry over the past few years, number one, led 10,000 employees, $1.8 billion company operations with direct oversight of 400 plus newspapers and websites. Now, come on. This was a heavy lifting job for you. Built Propel Marketing, developed property SaaS platforms. You really were driving the GateHouse world for many years, but you started, correct me if I'm wrong, in the recruitment space. Am I right? In Boston. That's how you got into the whole industry? If we can get a little bit
that was part of what I did. No, you're right. I started my career really at the Boston Globe. I worked there for, almost 20 years. Mm-hmm. I headed up ad sales. And as part of that, recruitment at the time was by far our biggest category and most profitable, amazingly profitable. We decided to spin out a recruitment-only division. That was a real multimedia approach, including a TV show, niche publications, and that kind of thing. So I headed up that business called Boston Works. That led to an opportunity at Monster outside of the Globe. So yeah, I kind of went down that recruitment path for a while.
And then obviously coming back into the industry through the GateHouse world, correct? That's where you came back.
Yeah, and GateHouse was especially Propel Marketing, it was a really good opportunity for me because I had this background of kind of steeped in local media, especially with the Globe, and with tech companies like Monster.com. I was at a startup, content creation startup called Helium.com for a few years, my own consulting business. So the GateHouse opportunity was really kind of a blending together of that local media and digital technology.
So basically, you're like me. You were a geek and a nerd before anyone knew what it was. And then being in
I try to keep that hidden, Mike, but thank you for surfacing that.
Yeah. Come on. I mean, I was carrying around computers with floppy drives in the old days, and then obviously entering the publishing business in the, I should say, the infancy of the internet, you kind of grew through the industry, but you led one of the largest, I guess, newspaper company in America. Now you've left it. A lot of people who are tuning into this podcast, obviously, are polarized about the world of consolidation. There's a lot of blogging about hedge funds taking over a newsroom. Where is the independent journalism of yesteryear? Let me just, I know we can't get into the minutia of what you did there because, your exit was obviously, I'm sure there's an NDA in place. And I'm never going to put you in that position.
That's right.
So let's stay at 50,000 feet on this. Get this out of the way before we talk about the future. Is consolidation better or worse for local media, and why? Tell me, in your opinion, what are the goods and the bads of what's going on?
Uh, and well, I especially like your last phrase because there are pros and cons, right? To
Hmm.
certainly to different approaches. It's not some, just black and white. Yes, that's right, or no, that's wrong. I think consolidation is a good thing for the local media industry, and I'll speak specifically to newspapers. One of the biggest reasons is, and this is a general business principle, right? It's not just local media. Scale really matters in today's business world, and I think it's vital that you tap into scale either through your own ownership, right, which is
Hmm.
consolidation, or if you are an independent, that you work with like companies, other independents, uh, or maybe even other larger companies, to help achieve that scale. Because
Hmm.
if you just operate independently, you're not going to get kind of basic things like better pricing, right, and purchasing and that type of thing. But you're also not probably going to have the capital or the funds to really leverage technology, the best of technology. And that could be technology you develop yourselves, or that could be the sophistication that you really need to win today using technology and data.
And
That's
also,
part of what scale gives you.
it also gives you the ability to have higher priced talent. Do you agree or disagree? Because the company itself can afford, I hate to say talent, but someone who may go to another industry where there's more money, but could be in our industry, making a decent living, providing the technology and the, I guess, the ability to help us get through the transition. Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, you just articulated much better than I did what sophistication means or how it translates.
Hmm.
But that is what I was really alluding to. It's that you're right, that person maybe that has deeper experience, or deeper technical skill. I'll give you a quick example, like a data scientist,
Right.
right, is an expensive proposition. And it presumes that you have really good consumer data to, for the data scientist to work with. So let's assume that for a second. But a data scientist is a very expensive proposition, let's say for one single market or a small independent, as opposed to spreading that person's skills across, multiple properties or multiple markets. That's where scale helps, right? And those economies of scale, and helps you afford a more sophisticated, more talented person like you're describing.
So if a gatehouse, let's say Gannett today, were to take over a small newspaper company or a small hyper-local weekly in a community, that community benefits through the scale of being able to have better technology, better delivery platform, possibly a better mobile presence. But let's then move to the newsroom side. And I know you were mostly on the business side, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like me,
That's
I don't
right.
know, the
That's fair.
background was all sales, but however, that's where most of the people are screaming now. Where is that local publisher? Where is that local newsroom? I don't see the same stories I used to. Do you believe that is a perception or a reality? And is that the future of the industry? Or I'm
I
putting you on
think
this.
it really depends. It varies widely from company to company,
Okay.
whether you're a big public company, or you're a private independent. You may have more freedom and flexibility as an independent. And when I say freedom or flexibility, you may not have public investors, right, that you need to answer to with quarterly earnings, but you face a lot of the same challenges and decisions on how much do I invest in local news, and journalism. So I guess it's a long-winded way of saying it all depends on your strategy and your execution. And there are big, large independents that continue to invest, I think, pretty heavily in journalism. There are others that seem to invest less, but the same thing is true for independents too, right? They don't all invest equally, probably, in local journalism. And part of that may be a reflection of the success they have with their local business models, right? It's like, what can they afford? So there are, a wide variety of applications. It really all depends on your strategy and your execution.
All right. GateHouse Media was buying existing brands. And the model for GateHouse's growth, if I may go back, because remember, you and I connected a lot. Full disclosure, my consulting business, one of my biggest clients for about 4 years was GateHouse Media.
Mm-hmm.
I was deployed in cities to help introduce products, do training, what have you. But your philosophy, correct me if I'm wrong, was, and you built a tremendous digital service arm for GateHouse. That was you, correct? Originally Propel, and I think it's called ThriveHive today. Am I correct, sir?
You're correct in the branding. It wasn't just me. There was a great team there, but yes, we had a great team, and we had really good success there.
But you were the champion of it. You helped it get started. It was your model, I assume, because I remember watching it grow. Your philosophy was, let's get into the local markets with that existing masthead and leverage that for the relationships with local advertisers. Yes, no?
Yes, that's right. And that was a strategy very early on that Mike Reed and Kirk Davis kind of developed, right? It's a theory. It was a theory, really. How can we extend these trusted local brands that we have, not only from an audience standpoint, but with business customers, and bring them new products and services that we haven't before, including people maybe who we haven't done business with, and in the vein of everybody needs digital marketing, right? Even if you're a B2B operation and you know what, you don't care as much about a local audience because your business is global, or maybe it's even, Asia Pac is your focus, but you still need digital marketing help. That's where a solution like Propel Marketing or ThriveHive really comes into play. So now every single business in your community is a potential customer, and that trusted local brand helps you get in the door better and faster than it might for a digital pure play, right? A technology company, a SaaS company that has a call center based in Phoenix, Arizona, and the local business has no idea, who they are, or necessarily they might know who they are, but they might not be as open to talking with them.
And there's absolutely no question. You and I both have 2 decades of watching the digital movement come into the media industry, that how many times have you come across a digital company, pure digital, with a great product, says to you, we're trying to sell it into local cities with telemarketers, and they then try to leverage a local media company to be their sales arm. We've seen that with so many. You're consulting now a couple very big companies. I mean, looking at your what your consulting firm is doing, you've got one called Site Impact, correct? That you're still working with? Yes, no. That is an amazing company, because correct me if I'm wrong, just about every newspaper company in the United States, and I may be wrong, and many of the television and radio stations are now using their email solution. They don't have a local sales arm, correct? They believe in that model, that let the local brand that has street cred take the product to market, correct?
That's right.
You're also now working, you're on the chairman of the board of Event, is that correct, sir?
Yes, that's right.
Another company. And I don't know, I'm sure you have NDAs locked down. Are you advising them in the same strategy, that local brand has so much street cred, it's easier to have the product sold that way than go direct and try to sell B2B either?
Yeah, well, Event is an interesting company because there's both an audience development and engagement play, right, with event listings, and it's one of the top 3 interests of local consumers, or consumers looking for local news and information, is live events, things to do. So there's a great play there for publishers. But you're right, in terms of the go-to-market, no, Event is not selling directly to companies, local businesses, those event promoters. They're doing it through that local publisher. And they're actually doing it in 2 different channels. The first channel is self-serve or self-transact. And this actually goes back to my experience at Monster.com. And Monster was a great example, one of the earlier examples, right, of what you just said. The technology platform that, in their case, they were going directly to local markets, but they weren't succeeding. Their penetration of local businesses for SMBs wasn't anywhere near what it could have been. And they said, geez, who has those customers already, or who has those trusted brands? Newspapers do, right? And local TV. So we developed a strategy for that at Monster to partner. Monster had never done that before. With Event, you're absolutely right. There is no direct sales force. It's all through partners. So companies like GateHouse or a whole host of others, Adams is another example. They have this self-serve. They have businesses coming to them now. This is a beautiful thing, and actually ties into lead generation. They have local businesses going to their platform, upselling themselves into a paid listing or feature. So it's a great form actually of a lead for a local media company sales rep to follow up on.
Let's talk about that.
That's a beautiful thing.
If I can dial back my clock, one of my first consulting clients was a company called Point and Shop Mall. I don't know if you remember them. I think I do, actually.
It
was so long ago. It was an e-commerce platform that they got just about every major newspaper company to come on board with to get local businesses to start. This is before Amazon, right? Or this was when e-commerce was young. And I used to say DIY and SMB are an oxymoron. It was hard to get the local business owner to go in and play with the interface. And then we had tools back in 2003 where an advertiser could actually change their banner listing on the website or change their recipe instantly on a landing page. And they never did back then. We had to hold their hand. Have we finally getting to a level where the local SMB decision maker is getting much more digital savvy, where a do-it-yourself interface can actually work and you can start not having to do all the servicing necessary? Because isn't that a problem? Every time I've talked to big vendors over the years that say, but every time we take the small business revenue, holding their hands through the process is so tough. Are we at a stage now where that's cost effective?
It is, and you see splices of it, right? So you see it in most obituaries today, right? A very lucrative category for newspapers. Most of those are self-transacted, right? Self-placed, if you will, by the funeral director through a couple of, through iPublish, through AdPay, a few other platforms like that. So there's a very good working model. Then there are some others in some more traditional classified categories. But to your point, I think it's just beginning to extend out into the broader SMB categories. And that's where there's huge opportunity if newspapers or any local publisher can figure out how to make it a really easy experience just for a local business to get started with them, right? Basically, it could even be a free product, right? That they then upsell themselves, or a salesperson upsells them into a paid form. And a lot of local media companies aren't accustomed to thinking like that. But that's a tried and true technology model, right? Or SaaS model. It's like freemium. Oh, try this, take advantage of this little service for free. But then if you want more, then you need to pay something.
Well, that's where you just said the word lead gen. Let's circle back to that. I'm a big believer in that. I think the freemium model, and I've seen it work, if I can call it that term, freemium, I don't know. But basically, if you can get a human being that has a desire for a product or service to actually then go into a platform and try it, you've got the lead, right? You've now got that qualified lead. Are you seeing that work in the industry now? Give me some examples where this is starting to grow.
Well, that is one of the biggest, right? That's a form of self-transact, so events. So that's one of the things we're actually working on is with media companies is, hey, when you have self-transacted business, here's the process that you can take to have your sales force grow that exponentially, really, right? Take, if you're generating $10,000 in self-transacted business, here's how to grow that to $100,000 or $250,000. That was actually the business model at Monster. Put local media companies aside. It was get SMBs to come in with a very basic buy, small dollars, and then have a highly talented call center follow up, occasionally outside sales too, but follow up to grow that customer over time.
I love that. Yeah.
You see it in some some classifications. Another form of lead gen like that, it's not self-transact, but is just about every one of these local media companies has a best of program, right?
Of course.
So category winners, it's best Italian restaurant, it's best dry cleaner, all these kinds of things. People love to vote on them. It's a huge deal, right? And you might have 150 or 200 category winners. So that's a great thing. So you've got that local media brand stamping their name and saying, you, Anton's, are the best dry cleaner in Newburyport. And you're looking at downtown Newburyport here. But that business that just won, great thing. Recognition on behalf of the local media company is not necessarily a customer of that local media company, right?
Right.
So a huge opportunity. If you take 200 category winners, most of those, over 100, are not current customers of yours. It's not quite self-transacted business, but you're literally giving them a plaque and a sticker, right? You've started the relationship with them.
Totally.
They participated. Every local media company should have a dedicated, focused plan, new customer acquisition on those best of category winners. Well, and I will tell you that a lot of them don't, right? That's new customer acquisition where it's not quite a freemium model, but you've already got a great start to a relationship.
You're talking to the publisher of a magazine that is doing right now the top 10 that do it right. Nominate your favorite media company. I'm all with you on that, because then we uncover a new relationship with a new advertiser through the nomination process. We do at least 4 of those a year here at E&P. And not only does it help build a relationship with the audience, because then we capture that data, we're also finding advertising through it as well. Talk to me then about, if I may, let's circle back for a second to the local brands. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying this is the GateHouse Gannett merger, but let's assume that there is some stripping now of that local brand in some markets. There's some markets now that don't even have a newspaper anymore. Do we agree? Mm-hmm. There are counties in the US. How important is that local brand in your opinion? Or can a new brand take the place as a pure play? As a man who's been in the industry for years, this is just a dialogue we're having so many places. Can a new brand slip in and then become greater than the old legacy brand of 140 years in a market? And is that possible in today's world?
Yes, it is possible. And there are some markets where that's been being proved out. It's unfortunate because I think it's in a lot of cases, it's the legacy brands market to continue to win if they want to and have the wherewithal to. So it's not a foregone conclusion. But if that legacy brand, and it could be, it's a lot of newspapers, right? But it could be, TV for some reason, if they kind of lose their touch and their engagement ultimately, and that's very measurable, with the local community, that opens up space for a digital pure play to come in, who may have a very different way of not only covering local news, but engaging local consumers around things that are important to them. That's a big part of it. So yes, it's you might not have asked this question specifically, but it is maybe to the extent to which you cover news, and not just news, but what's going on in your community. But it's also, how is it that you're engaging that audience? How focused are you on that? How good are you, at that? That either opens up opportunity for digital pure plays or can potentially, make it much more difficult for them.
I agree. And I think that's one of the things we have to watch out for in our industry today, is that if you have that brand, you're constantly polishing it. If I may pontificate, that's what we're trying to do here at E&P, is constantly move forward with a legacy that has a new image, a new polish, which is why when we circle back to the lead gen, I remember back when digital services was hot, many media companies dropped the 140-year-old masthead and tried to launch a brand new brand. Does that a brand new brand sounds redundant for their digital services? But then they always circled back that it's, to get in the door with the local business. The brands have street cred. But once you lose that, then you're on your own, correct? You're a pure.
Right. Right. No, absolutely. Yeah. What maybe put another way, what can and should be a very positive brand impact, right, and reputation can also flip. Mm-hmm. It's not a foregone conclusion that it'll always stay up here and be that brand that you can extend. Fortunately, I think a lot of newspapers, most newspapers, especially, and TV and radio, still have that kind of halo. Maybe it's not halo effect, but that brand strength to leverage and extend from.
Exactly. And I think that's there's still a lot of marginal utility in those brands. And I was actually surprised when Warren Buffett sold them off, but then provides the money to the loan. But when I heard that the Buffalo News went for $10 million, that was a little scary to me, because that's a brand in a market. Don't you agree? And then
yeah. I mean, the Buffalo News is a great example, right? There's a lot of brand strength there. There's a lot of pride in that local community, with great tradition. So there's, it's an NFL city. There are a lot of things that are very positive about it. It's turned around, or is turning around economically. Mm-hmm. So there's still got opportunity there. It's a matter of having, a great strategy and executing on it.
And moving forward. Well, let's move on now. You're very involved with LMA, the Local Media Association. You've been with them for years, and everywhere I turn now, I'm hearing about Accelerate Local that you're doing. Would you just give me a quick overview of what that is and why that's exciting and what you're doing?
Sure, and I've always enjoyed working with LMA. In the past, 6 or 7 years, it's been as a board member, really representing GateHouse on that LMA board. And LMA, for people who aren't familiar with it, really is the kind of thought leader, I think, in the local media space, and really kind of, I'm going to say, media agnostic, in identifying kind of best practices in all facets of the business, and really putting those up on a platform so that people can learn and accelerate their own business. And there was an unintentional play on words, but Accelerate Local is really taking that, wherewithal from, that's best practice and thought leadership, and putting it more into bolder action. So Accelerate Local is about digital transformation, but especially identifying and building new business models for local media. And transformative new business models. So some of the projects that I've worked on there, and it's been a great, it's been a better part of a year, include the G&I Data Lab Google News Initiative.
Right.
So that was a joint effort between LMA, Google, and Deloitte Consulting, mm-hmm. Working with a half a dozen local media companies, a mix of TV and newspaper. So we had people like Seattle Times, Philadelphia Inquirer, St. Louis Post-Dispatch as part of Lee, but also Meredith owned and operated TV stations, NBC owned and operated TV stations. And it was all about assessing their data maturity as an organization, and then figuring out where they had, some of the biggest gaps and what they can do over time to close those gaps. So that's some of, like we were talking about earlier, that can be from a talent standpoint, culture within their company, using, making data-informed decisions in every aspect. That can also have very practical applications. We focus quite a bit on ad revenue, digital ad revenue. And I'll give you one quick insight into that, because it kind of ties back to lead generation earlier. A lot of media companies, Lee is a good example, they really excel at programmatic advertising. Done a great job generating new revenue, improving yields over time, while still maintaining a good user experience on their websites.
Is that a supply side or demand side or both? Are they selling programmatic locally?
Yes.
Simply
So, well,
leveraging?
in this case, they're selling through exchanges, but that gets to the opportunity. So what a lot of media companies have is, a programmatic group or team or person over here, and then they have their direct sales group and team.
Mm-hmm.
And there's not necessarily a lot of commingling of the operation, but also in using the data.
Right.
So this is where so programmatic produces a lot of great data. And if you think about it, this is actually a form of businesses self-transacting to buy your audience. Some publishers might look at programmatic as a negative. I'm like, no, this is awesome. These people went in an auction, and these businesses, it could be could be Microsoft, but it can also be a local car dealer. They went in a tech-driven auction, selected your audience, and are paying this price over time.
Wow.
So now you want to take that information and feed it to direct sales, right? So direct sales can see, hey, what are the hot categories? What are people that we don't even do business with today, otherwise, companies? What are they willing to pay? And not just what are the hot categories, who has the highest yield, right? And who are those companies? And let's use that to inform our direct selling strategy.
Of course.
Let's go talk to those companies, right? Let's talk to them about other services and products that we have. That's great information. So that's actually a form of self-transact that is even bigger scale than some of the stuff we were talking about earlier, that requires a little more sophistication to take advantage of, but it's all kind of there for people. So anyway, that was one of the outcomes, if you will, or follow-throughs in the data lab.
So we're getting near the end of our journey, Peter. Let me ask you some quick questions about your vision. For example, how do independent newspapers survive over the next 5 or 10 years, in your opinion?
I think one of the most important things is they need to work together in a deeper, broader, bolder ways than they have in the past. I think they'll really struggle to survive operating still like they do today. Mm-hmm. And when I say that, to be more specific, it includes things like back office type operations, mm-hmm. which they should not each have separately necessarily, right? Some type of joint operation, right. But also in things like core technology and data, consumer data, business company data, like we were talking about earlier. Very hard to have the sophistication and technology investment like you need just entirely doing it yourself. You need to do that collaboratively. I mean, what form that takes is a different thing, but within the next 2 or 3 years, I think that's a huge thing.
Also, there are organizations that will help them find commonality, like LMC, correct? Local Media Consortium, where they can negotiate better rates for technology.
Yeah, the negotiating better rates, and and some vetting of the quality of those providers mm-hmm. is a huge value. And LMC does an excellent job of that. I'm talking about taking it a few steps further, that some of these independents are literally on the same platform, maybe even the same instance, in more of a shared way.
Mm-hmm. All right. Who is your competitor in a local market? I mean, is it time for more alliances between traditional media? I noticed that LMA, where you spend a lot of your energy now, has brought television and radio together. And initially, when I'm out, remember, my focus was always local sales, right? I would go into a market, it wasn't national, it was local. And I competed with the local TV and radio station. So I always felt like I got to work only with a newspaper organization. Are those the competitors of today, or should local legacy media be working together in order to strengthen their presence?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, yes, they certainly are competitors, but there are a lot more partnership opportunities I've been a little surprised with the kind of loosening of cross ownership rules, that there haven't been more.
Why haven't
combinations like that? Because I especially think both with newspaper and TV, and with newspaper and radio. And when we say radio, it's kind of the traditional form of that, but it's really audio, right? And you look at what some newspapers are really beginning to do from an audio strategy, with podcasts and other things like that. And if you melded that together with the much deeper audio capabilities of local radio, that could be pretty powerful.
I agree.
And TV, especially with their video creation capabilities, and newspapers, which tend to have, much deeper local news reporting and investigative reporting and that kind of thing. I think there are some real natural synergies there.
What would you say to someone who's young right now, who has that itch to be in local journalism or local media and is scared to enter the business because of all the doom and gloom that they're hearing? What advice would you give to someone in their 20s who's just entering the arena?
Well, someone in their 20s might not listen as much to this, but I'm a huge believer that journalism is just a foundational pillar of democracy. Mm-hmm. So it's hugely important. So number one, very noble profession, and worthwhile. And there will always be a demand for quality journalism, especially in local news reporting. When I'm saying that, there will always be demand. So there will always be job opportunities, whether you're a writer or a videographer, or an audio specialist, whatever that might be. It's really a matter of how that manifests itself through what medium. So great field to get into.
What about someone who's thinking of actually, God forbid, going into sales, marketing?
Oh, same thing. Well, Mike, there's always room for a great salesperson. If you're talking about, sales in local media. I mean, the great story, and it kind of gets lost in all of this is, or in all of the kind of a decline of traditional media, when that's, TV broadcast or radio stations or newspaper print readership, is that the audience, when you include digital and social media, it has actually never been bigger. So there are phenomenal sales opportunities if you look at it like that, which also means from a sales standpoint, you absolutely need to be digital savvy, right? And even digital centric and digital first in your thoughts and your mindset and your capabilities. So if you are those things, there's great opportunity.
Excellent. Well, Peter, we really enjoyed having you here today. Your insights. You'll join us in a few months and let us know how things are going. And more importantly, good luck with Accelerate Local. That sounds amazingly innovative. I mean, to take money, I assume Google money, and use it to innovate and then create case studies is amazing. Is there more of that coming? Is that going to be continuing?
Yeah, I actually only spoke to the GNI Data Lab, and I'll be very brief. We have a project going on right now. It's completely self-funded by the participants in LMA. That's paid membership for local TV. Really different. Talk about brand extensions and thinking very differently. We've got 3 TV companies participating in that. And something we're very excited about, News Fuel, which is a new matchmaking platform for grants, journalism grants, matching a news org that's seeking funding for journalism and funders, right? Foundations, philanthropists, other nonprofits. They could be, large national foundations, or there are literally hundreds of community and family foundations that either very explicitly will donate to journalism or are beginning to consider that more in their overall giving. So we're actually this week in the middle of a vision sprint with a Boston-based design firm that will build the MVP version of that platform for us. That's all within Accelerate Local. So that's really exciting for us.
That's very exciting. And of course, they can just go to the LMA website and learn more about that, I assume. Correct?
That's right.
Great. Yep. Peter, I appreciate your time. President and founder of Big Rock Consulting. You're obviously still very, very embedded in our industry. And thanks so much for being part of EMP Reports today.
Great. Thanks, Mike. Really enjoyed it.